A young man finds a stray puppy and, despite his busy life, decides to care for it. Years later, when he's stranded in a storm, the kindness he showed returns as someone he helped recognizes him and provides shelter. A clumsy apprentice breaks a valuable vase. Instead of punishment, the master teaches him to craft a new one, instilling patience and resilience. A scholar, certain of his knowledge, debates an old hermit. The hermit leads him to a well and asks him to scoop water endlessly, teaching him humility as he realizes he can't measure the well's depth. An old fisherman rarely spoke, but his village respected him deeply. One day, a young man asked why he was so quiet. The fisherman pointed to the ocean and said, "Like the sea, wisdom lies deep, and words are but ripples on the surface." A poor farmer, despite his limited means, shared his only meal with a hungry traveler. Years later, that traveler, now a wealthy merchant, returned and helped the farmer rebuild his barn after a storm. A gardener planted bamboo but saw no growth for years. Just as he was about to give up, it suddenly sprouted and grew rapidly. He realized the roots had been developing all along, teaching him to trust unseen progress. A father gave his sons a bundle of sticks and asked them to break it. They failed. When he untied the bundle, each stick broke easily. "Together, you are unbreakable," he said, emphasizing the power of unity. A traveler was caught in a downpour and cursed the rain. A farmer passing by smiled and said, "Without this rain, the crops won't grow, and neither will we." The traveler learned to see blessings even in discomfort. An archer shot an arrow that missed its target. Blaming the wind, he met a sage who said, "The wind only reveals your aim's truth. Adjust your focus, not your excuses." The archer learned to take responsibility. A young monk complained of his endless chores. The master gave him a mirror and asked, "What do you see?" The monk replied, "My tired self." The master said, "Then clean the mirror," showing that reflection can clear the mind. A potter's vase cracked during firing. Instead of discarding it, he filled the cracks with gold. The vase became more beautiful, teaching that flaws can add value. Two friends quarreled. One wrote the offense in sand, and the other carved it in stone. The tide erased the sand, but the carving remained. "Let hurts wash away. Only cherish love," the carver said. A child played with a stick in the dirt, creating castles in his mind. A passing king, burdened by his crown, envied the child's freedom. He learned happiness lies not in riches, but in a simple heart. A boy was afraid of the dark forest near his home. One evening, he entered it with a lantern and found it was full of life, not monsters. Facing fear often reveals its hollowness. A teacher gave her students seeds to plant. While others waited for flowers, one boy tended to weeds, learning patience. His flower bloomed last but the brightest, teaching him growth takes time. A tree bent in a storm while others broke. "I yield, but I do not give up," it said to the fallen trees, teaching that resilience comes from adaptability. A merchant found a goose that laid golden eggs. His greed led him to kill it, hoping for all the gold at once, but he found none. Satisfaction often sustains wealth. A river carved mountains over centuries, teaching that persistence achieves what force cannot. "Flow with time, and you'll shape the unmovable," it whispered to those who listened. A girl helped an injured bird recover. When it flew away without looking back, she smiled and said, "Your flight is my thanks," teaching that true kindness seeks no reward. A traveler carried a heavy bag of rocks, refusing to let go. A wise man said, "Your anger is like those rocks. Drop them, and you'll walk lighter." The traveler let go and found peace. A child tossed pebbles into a lake, watching the ripples. When she ran out of pebbles, her grandmother said, "The ripples come from within you. Even when you have no stones, you can still create waves." An apprentice complained about repairing an old clock, saying it was too slow. The clockmaker replied, "Its slowness has measured generations of life. Speed is not its purpose, accuracy is." The apprentice learned to value function over haste. A boy feared his shadow until his grandfather said, "It follows you because you carry light." The boy learned that even darkness exists only because of light. A scholar visited a Zen master, boasting of his knowledge. The master poured tea into the scholar's cup until it overflowed. "You are like this cup, already full. Empty yourself to learn more," the master said. A shepherd lit his lantern to find a lost lamb. He tripped and dropped it, but kept walking. When he reached the lamb, he realized the light came from his faith, not the lantern. Two feuding villages were separated by a river. A traveler built a bridge and left, never revealing which side he belonged to. The villages reconciled, realizing unity was stronger than division. A girl sat beneath a tree, frustrated by her failures. The rustling leaves seemed to whisper, "Every fall nourishes the ground for new growth." She learned to see failure as a step toward success. A young monk vowed silence, but struggled with his temper. An elder told him, "Silence outside means little if inside there's noise. Still your heart, not your tongue." The young monk found peace. A man sought a treasure hidden in the forest but got lost. Years later, he realized the journey had given him wisdom and courage, which were more valuable than gold. A merchant shattered a mirror and lamented the loss of his reflection. A beggar laughed and said, "You don't need a mirror to see yourself. Just look into the eyes of others." The merchant learned to see himself in humanity. A dusty book lay forgotten in a library. When a child finally read it, they found wisdom that changed their life. The book whispered, "Knowledge waits for those who seek it." A candle burned brightly but feared the wind. A passing traveler used it to light a bonfire, teaching the candle that its flame could spark greater fires. A caged eagle refused to fly when freed. A wise woman said, "You're free, but your mind is still trapped. Take one leap, and you'll know the sky." The eagle soared at last. A dog waited years for its owner at the same spot where they had parted. When the owner returned, the loyalty of the dog brought tears, showing the power of unwavering love. An artist spent years perfecting a single brushstroke. When asked why, he said, "In this stroke lies my whole journey. Mastery is in the simplest acts." A man rested under a tree and cursed the heat. The tree whispered, "I give you shade, yet you complain. Gratitude is the cooler shade." The man learned to appreciate unnoticed gifts. A boy heard a bell ringing far away and sought it for years, thinking it held secrets. When he finally reached it, he realized the journey had been the real treasure. A blind man carried a lantern at night. When asked why, he said, "It's for others to see me." He taught that light isn't just for the self, but for the world. A carver spent decades sculpting a stone into a masterpiece. When praised, he said, "The stone had the beauty within. I only freed it." He taught that greatness lies in uncovering, not creating. A sailor chased the horizon, hoping to reach its end. He never found it but discovered the beauty of endless possibility along the way. Let me know if you'd like more. A weaver created a vibrant tapestry, but left one thread loose. When asked why, she said, "Perfection needs a flaw to remind us we're human." The loose thread became a symbol of humility. A sparrow built its nest twig by twig, enduring storms and setbacks. A child watching asked, "Why not give up?" The sparrow chirped, "Because my dreams are worth the effort." A beggar lent his only coat to a freezing stranger. The next day, the stranger returned it, filled with gold coins, saying, "Your warmth saved more than my body." Generosity often finds unexpected returns. A traveler carried a map that blew away in a storm. Lost, He began to trust his instincts and found a better path. Sometimes losing direction helps us find our own. A glassblower shaped fragile art, despite knowing it might break. Why risk it? A visitor asked. Because beauty is worth its fragility, the glassblower replied, teaching that joy often comes with risk. A child laughed uncontrollably at a broken toy. Why laugh? Asked his mother. Because it's already broken, the child replied, showing that acceptance can transform sorrow into joy. An owl stayed silent as forest animals argued. Why don't you speak? Asked the fox. The owl hooted. Words scatter like leaves in wind. Wisdom settles in silence. Silence often speaks louder than words. A star dimmed as a new one rose beside it. Instead of envy, it whispered, "Shine brighter. The sky is wide enough for us all." The universe taught that there's room for everyone's light. A seed landed in a rocky crevice and sprouted into a resilient tree. When asked how, it said, "I found strength in what seemed impossible." Obstacles often nurture growth. A vase shattered into pieces, and its owner glued it back together with gold. The repaired vase became a treasure, teaching that brokenness can be made beautiful. A lantern shone in an abandoned lighthouse, guiding ships through storms. Though unseen and unthanked, it continued to shine, teaching that doing good needs no audience. A farmer watered barren land for years before it bloomed. When asked why, he said, "The soil wasn't ready, but I was." Preparation meets opportunity at the right time. An old musician hummed a forgotten tune that made listeners weep. Why does it move us? They asked. Because it reminds you of what you've lost and found, he replied. Music often speaks the unspeakable. A blind sculptor created statues so lifelike that people wondered how he did it. "I feel with my hands and heart," he said, teaching that true vision lies within. A man cursed the wind for scattering his papers. The wind whispered back, "I only reveal what you cannot hold tightly." He learned to let go of what wasn't meant to stay. A pebble dropped in a pond sent ripples across the water. "I'm too small to matter," it said. The pond replied, "Even small things create waves. Everything has impact." A flower bloomed in a desert, ignored by passers-by. A traveler paused to admire it, saying, "You remind me beauty exists everywhere. Even unnoticed beauty has purpose." A kite soared high, but always returned to its string. "Why don't you break free?" asked the wind. "Because it's my tether that lets me fly," it replied, teaching the value of grounding. A painter created murals in hidden alleys, knowing few would see them. When asked why, he said, "Art isn't for recognition. It's for the soul." Passion often needs no audience. A leaf floated through the seasons, wondering about its purpose. In winter, it became mulch, nourishing new life. "You were always part of something greater," whispered the earth. A mountain stood silently as climbers came and went, some reaching its peak, others failing. "Don't you care?" a cloud asked. The mountain replied, "I exist for their journey, not their success." The journey matters more than the outcome. A boy shouted into a cave and heard his voice echo back. "Why does it mimic me?" he asked. A wise man said, "Life mirrors what you send out." The boy learned to be mindful of his actions. A goose laid a golden feather every day. When asked why it didn't lay them all at once, it said, "True wealth is created patiently, not hastily." Rushing often depletes treasure. A star fell to the earth, becoming a grain of sand. When lamented, it said, "Now I can feel the ocean." Transformation often brings new purpose. A farmer's gate stood open, yet his animals stayed inside. "Why don't they leave?" asked a passerby. "Because I care for them, not cage them," the farmer said. Freedom thrives in love, not restriction. A rich man gave his shoes to a beggar, walking barefoot for a day. "Why suffer?" he was asked. To feel their pain is to understand their path, he replied, teaching empathy through experience. A cloud drifted across the sky, envied by the sun for its freedom. The cloud said, I owe my journey to the wind, just as you owe your brilliance to your fire. Gratitude anchors even the free. A bell hung silent in a remote forest, unnoticed for years. One day, a breeze struck it, and its sound echoed far. Even silence prepares for its moment, it said, teaching patience. A spider wove its web in a corner, unnoticed until morning dew revealed its beauty. Even unseen efforts leave their mark, the spider said. Hard work often finds recognition in time. An old key lay forgotten until a boy found it and unlocked a dusty chest. I waited for the right hands, the key said. Even things left behind can fulfill their purpose. A monk carried an empty bowl, filling it only when offered food. Why not keep it full? A traveler asked. Because space welcomes blessings, the monk replied, teaching the value of emptiness. A caged bird forgot its song until freed. As it flew, its melody returned. Freedom restores what confinement steals, it sang, teaching the importance of liberation. A wave asked the ocean, when will I stop crashing? The ocean replied, you're part of my endless rhythm. Rest in that. Acceptance brings peace. A flickering lantern guided a sailor through a storm. When extinguished, its keeper said, even a moment of light can save a life. Small efforts hold great value. An old tree shed its leaves each winter without complaint. Why not hold on to them? Asked a bird. Letting go makes room for renewal, the tree said, showing the power of release. A monk traveled without a destination. When asked why he wandered, he replied, the path itself is the purpose. Life's journey is often more meaningful than its destination. A broken clock stood in a town square, marking the same time every day. When asked why it remained, the mayor said, even broken things are right twice a day. Flaws don't erase worth. A child tried to help a butterfly escape its cocoon, but it couldn't fly. It needed the struggle to strengthen its wings, an elder said, teaching that hardship builds resilience. A fisherman mended his torn net each night. Why not buy a new one? Asked his son. Because this net taught me patience, he said, valuing persistence over replacement. A river sang as it flowed, carving canyons and nurturing valleys. Why do you sing? Asked a stone. Because movement is life, and I celebrate it, the river replied, showing the joy of progress. A candle boasted of its light until the sun rose. Do you envy my brightness? Asked the sun. No, said the candle, I light the night while you rest. Every roll has its time to shine. A drum remained silent until struck. Why stay quiet? A musician asked. The drum replied, noise has its moment. Silence prepares for it. Both quiet and action have their purpose. A seed was carried by the wind to barren soil. It struggled but grew into a hardy tree. Adversity rooted me deeply, it said, proving strength comes from challenge. A jar leaked water every time it was used. Its owner kept it, saying, the trail of water nurtures the flowers along the path. Imperfections often serve hidden purposes. A spider rebuilt its web each time the wind tore it down. Why not stop? A bird asked. The wind tests my skill, the spider replied, teaching perseverance. A sailor panicked when the stars were hidden by clouds. Use the sound of the waves, said an elder. The sea has its own map. Even when familiar guides fail, others emerge. A puppet lamented its strings, wishing for freedom. Without them, you'd collapse, said the puppeteer. Boundaries often support rather than restrain. A fire's last embers glowed softly, warming a traveler. Even in my fading, I can comfort, it said, showing that endings can still bring light. A rusty compass still pointed north. When teased by newer ones, it said, I may be worn, but my truth remains. Wisdom endures, regardless of appearance. A shepherd played his flute for his sheep, calming them during storms. Why do you play for them? A passerby asked. Because my peace becomes theirs, he said, showing how calm spreads. A man chased his shadow, trying to outrun it. Exhausted, he finally stopped, and his shadow settled beside him. You cannot escape what is part of you, it whispered, teaching self-acceptance. Two rivers parted ways, one rushing to the sea, the other trickling into a meadow. We'll meet again, they promised. Paths diverge, but connections endure. A bell tower stood tall, its bell unused for years. When rung for an emergency, its sound echoed far. Even in waiting, I was ready, it said, showing preparation matters. A stone sat unmoved by passing storms. A traveler asked, "Why don't you fear the wind?" The stone replied, "I am part of the earth. Nothing can uproot me." Strength lies in knowing one's foundation. A farmer noticed his shadow grew longest at day's end. "Why do you appear larger then?" he asked. The shadow replied, "The closer you are to rest, the greater your impact becomes." Flower bloomed in the shade, unseen by most. "Why bloom here?" a bird asked. "Because I exist for life, not applause," it replied, teaching self-worth beyond recognition. A grain of sand fell through an hourglass and lamented its insignificance. The hourglass replied, "Each of you measures time. No grain is wasted. Every small contribution matters." A single star shone in a cloudy sky. A child whispered, "You're all alone." The star twinkled back, "I'm here to remind you there's always light, no matter how small." A gatekeeper carried a key for years without using it. One day, a traveler arrived, seeking the locked door. The gatekeeper smiled, knowing patience had fulfilled its purpose. A circle drawn in the sand began to fade with the tide. "Doesn't it bother you?" asked the tide. The circle replied, "I've shown my form and am ready to begin again."